Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 858. I'm Tom Cagley, your host. Today, we feature a tale of work intake woe set in the Innovatech world that David Herron and I created. In this world, we use a bit of fiction to highlight real-world problems without pointing fingers or calling anyone a box of rocks. I'd love your feedback about using allegory to highlight real issues. We'll also have a visit from Jeremy Bearriult, the Evolutionary Agilist, who brings his humor and wisdom to the podcast. A cautionary tale of work intake woe. Innovatech, once a dominant force in construction software, faced a growing threat of obsolescence as agile startups encroached on its market share. To revitalize the company, the CEO launched Embracing AI, a strategic initiative to infuse AI capabilities into their product suite. This short story reflects the day-to-day realities of at least one of the teams struggling to deliver product. Flickering fluorescent lights in Embracing AI's war room hummed a monotonous tune, a soundtrack to Larry's growing frustration. He stared at the email, a sprawling, barely formatted request from a senior product manager. Need this done ASAP. Details attached. The details were a picture of a jumbled mess of bullet points, a vague spreadsheet, and a link to a shared drive with unlabeled files. Larry, a mid-level manager, knew this was a recipe for disaster. This was the third ASAP request this week, each with the same lack of clarity. There was no formal intake process at Innovatech. Requests simply appeared, dropped like unpredictable bombs into the project queue. He wanted to ask for clarification, to push back on the unrealistic timeline, to suggest a proper scope definition meeting. But the senior manager's email was laced with an unspoken urgency, a subtle pressure that made his stomach churn. The last time someone, a contract analyst named Mark, had questioned a similar request, he'd been met with a curt, "Just get it done," and a cold stare. A few weeks later, Mark's contract wasn't renewed. It was a poorly kept secret that the product manager had gone out of his way to help Mark leave. Larry looked around the open plan office. His colleagues, heads bowed, were already wrestling with their chaotic assignments. A shared sense of resignation hung in the air. This was just how things were done at Innovatech. It's always been done this way, his senior manager had shrugged a weary acceptance. He had tried to piece together the vague requirements, spending hours deciphering the spreadsheet, sifting through the unlabeled files. Each time he thought he had a grasp on the project, another email would arrive, adding a new layer of complexity, a new urgent request. The scope of the work kept expanding. The timeline remained unchanged, and Larry's anxiety grew. The lack of a standardized process, the fear of speaking up, the normalization of chaos, it all combined to create a sense of utter powerlessness. Larry and his peers felt like a cog in the machine, forced to spin faster and faster, even as the machine threatened to break down. He knew deep down this wasn't sustainable, that the lack of clear work intake was costing the company time, money, and morale. But at Innovatech, questioning the flow of work was a risk few were willing to take. This tale of work intake is written in the Innovatech universe, created by Tom Cagley, myself, and David Herron, synthesized from real-life stories. This story protects the innocent and pokes fun at those acting like a box of rocks. Work intake problems cause real problems, like Larry's. Mastering Work Intake by Tom Cagley and Jeremy Bearriult offers actionable steps to control workflow, align with strategic goals, and prioritize effectively. Learn 9 core principles backed by real-world examples to transform your team's productivity. Stop the denial of service attack on your projects. Links to J. Ross and Amazon. Buy a copy and read it today. Overwhelmed? Find your focus. Readers praise Mastering Work Intake for its practical, actionable advice. Learn to prioritize effectively and eliminate bottlenecks. Real results, real changes. Discover the system that simplifies complex projects. Order your copy today. Links in the show notes to buy a copy of Mastering Work Intake, who sponsors the SPaMCAST, at J. Ross Publishing and on Amazon. Jeremy Bearriult, welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast.
It's always fun to be here, Tom.
You know, I'm glad that you think it's fun, because I like to have fun, and I like this to be fun. We end up talking about really hard and strange things sometimes, but I think we always do it from, with a little bit of a laugh, and keeping it focused on the being positive. Today,
well, you have to. It's the best way to live.
Agreed. I mean, you could be anxious, you could be worried, all sorts of things you could be. All right, Jeremy. A few weeks ago, I sent you a video by Dan Ariely, the behavioral economist, and asked you to listen to it. And the whole idea of cars versus phones and the progress, comparison between the two. How did that strike you in terms of the world we live in?
I found it very interesting. I was basically right from the start till the end. It was a very good talk. He's a very good speaker. I'll give him that. And he has the points he brought up were initially I wanted to see where it was going to go, like between phones and cars. Initially, I thought he was going to be talking about texting and cars and stuff like that. So, completely different. It was nice to see that how he kind of brought up, like in cars, we're trying to make it as safe as we can for the individual. We're trying to take a lot of the stuff out of play so that they can be safe if something drastic were to happen. But we're on the internet, like on our phones, it's a free for all. We don't, there's no kind of, not filter, but there's nothing there to protect anyone from the information that's within there. And I think I think it hit home a lot for me because I have 2 teenage boys and they are on their phones and their tablets a lot. And we're having those conversations. We've had a couple conversations where they would see something. I forget what it was, but it was something that was just completely out there in left field from a news article or from some sort of news. And they just asked me about it, and it was like, nope, that never happened. I think it was something about it was during the elections, and then it was someone brought up the news article about the pizza place in New York when Hillary Clinton was running for president.
Pizzagate. I remember Pizzagate.
Yeah, and it was just weird because I know they looked at the internet. I know they read fan fiction. I know I know some of the sites they went on. It was the first time I've actually seen them go to somewhere where they don't normally go. Something popped up. It was clickbait, and they went and took a look at it. And so I had to have that conversation with them. I was like, hey, like not everything on the internet is true.
What?
I know. It's a shocker to me too. I think that was the other thing I got out of that video.
Everything about Agile on the internet is true.
Oh, yeah, of course. Of course. That's a whole other conversation in itself. But I think it was just how we protect ourselves in the car, but we don't protect ourselves in the phone. I think there's more damage that can happen with the phone or i.e. the internet that can happen mentally, not physically, if things aren't taken a look at. And that's probably what I got out of that video.
And I think that's fair. I think that was the point. Let's extrapolate that into our industry, the industry of continuous improvement. Are we helping organizations to, create something more akin to the phone where it's just unbridled, unconstrained, growth and innovation versus something like the car, which we perceive as a danger in some cases and try to protect society as a whole or organizations as a whole?
Initially, if you were to ask me this question, say like 5-6 years ago, I would say we're the car. Asking me now in today's climate, I would say we are the phone. It's the phone, hands down.
Why? Tell me why.
I think part of it is I know there's news and there's other sites and there's people talking about like an oversaturation of like agile coaches. And no one saw in the video, Tom and I were in the video, I used air quotes. So,
I've been oversaturated for a while, and that's why I put those drying pads in my shoes after I go out and run in the slush in the water. They got oversaturated.
They work. But I think if you look at a lot of the job descriptions going through, especially now, like it's like, oh, we're looking for an agile coach. Not so much. Some of them I've seen, and some I've had some people float them by me, asking for help, kind of how to set up their resume for it. And they would say, it's like, oh, as long as you're like, for the most part, if you read through it, if you were a Scrum Master for probably more than 6 months, they would consider you an agile coach.
I am laughing.
Yeah.
Quiet.
And I think that's where things can go wrong within the industry. And I think that's why there's a lot of organizations out there that are maybe a little gun shy about doing any sort of transformation or continuous improvement transformation using agile coaches or something like that, or something in that same fashion, because they have a cognitive bias towards something that happened before. Maybe they had a bad agile coach, or they know someone that had a bad agile coach and the transformation was just a complete and utter mess. And I think in the coaching industry overall, not just from an agile perspective, but overall, any sort of coach, life coach, financial coach, all that, there's a code of ethics and there's a way that an understanding and training and knowledge and experience that needs to happen for you to be a good coach to help others. And it's not something that can be done in like a weekend course. It's not something that can be done that if I was a certified Scrum Master for a year to turn around and call myself a coach. And I think that oversaturation is kind of what happens now. The industry has now turned into the phone based on that video, in that there are some good stuff out there. There are some great coaches out there that I know of. I've talked to them. I've met them at conferences. I've met them at networking events. And there are some that I know that, hey, they should build up their experience. They should build up their knowledge and understanding of how to effectively be a coach.
Yeah, I think as markets, I read an article. I think it was at Huxley, that said that ideas start as heresies and then over time become superstitions. And I think we've gone through that phase in many cases with Agile. And having been in the industry long enough, I've been through it with any number of different approaches before, whether it's case systems or CMMI, things like that. So yeah, it happens, right? It happens. you get to a point where there's a lot of people running around trying to feed their families. And so you can't really point and say they're bad, but they tend to be either a tad bit hysterical or a bit hyperbolic, and everything, the ideas get crazy, and it becomes unbridled, unrestrained innovation, and unrestrained and unbridled based on real data. So I agree. I think it's the phone versus the car scenario. And what happens? What happens in the end? What if we take and extrapolate the phone metaphor that Ariely was using? If we extrapolate that out 10 years from now, where does that take our industry?
Without any checks, then I think I would say the agile, air quotes, industry, because as we've talked about before, I don't like using the word as a noun. I prefer to keep it as an adjective as meant to be.
Agile industrial complex. It's a noun.
I would say if there's no checks, and if we as people in the industry that want to do better, that want to make things work and know that this can work, if we don't have those checks, then it's just going to disappear. It'll just be no different than whatever new management style comes out for any sort of conference. I don't think we're teetering. I would say probably more than 10 years. I think that would probably happen. I don't think it would happen within the 10 years. But it definitely, I think we're at a point now that we could start making positive change and making the positive change that what everyone wanted to do initially way back when to make things better. And as we know, like the term agile work or agile environment, that's been around longer than since before February 2001. Like it came a rebranded. It maybe it came used different words, but the management style, leadership style, and working style that we all want to use and want to help organizations use is in an agile environment or ecosystem has been around for well over a century. It's just now we have a lot of people trying to get that piece of the pie, and without fully understanding what is fully involved and the behaviors that are fully involved to get there, it's just going to turn into similar to what the blog I wrote a little while ago, I think late last year, where I talked about Frankenstein's monster. Everyone's just going to piece together all this stuff together. They're going to have a functioning humanoid type environment that can walk, that can talk, that can grab things, but it's going to be big, clunky, and frustrating.
Almost said something that would get us sued, which I'll edit out. Jeremy, if people wanted to continue the conversation, they wanted to watch the Ariely video and then debate you as to meaning, how would they find Jeremy Bearriult? How would they find out about Bearriult and Associates?
They can find me on LinkedIn. You can just do a quick search for Jeremy Bearriult. I'm sure it's in the notes. My last name is not spelt the way you may think. So it's a nice French-Canadian name.
Sometimes not the way I even spell it. I don't think I've done that in about 10 years, though.
No, it's been a while. Copy and paste works really well.
I programmed it into spell check.
Oh, awesome. So you can reach me through LinkedIn. You do a quick search for my name in Toronto. You'll find me there. You can find me at my website at bearriultandassociates.com. And you can email me at jbearriult, no dots, just one word, at bearriultandassociates.com.
Again, this has been marvelous. Until we do this again, Mr. Bearriult, thank you.
Till next time, Tom.
In Reread Saturday News, in our reread of Development is Freedom, this week we reach Chapter 10 titled Culture and Human Rights. The chapter explores the intellectual edifice of human rights. The concept of human rights is often trotted out almost as if it's a totem in debates. We need to get beyond that perspective. A little bit of a logistics notes for the reread. We have 2 more weeks in this reread. Next week, we'll reflect on Chapter 12. Remember, we did Chapter 11 a few weeks back. And then we will follow that up the following week with a bit of a wrap-up. Remember, you can find all of the installments of Development is Freedom's reread on the blog at www.tcagley.wordpress.com or on tomcagley.com. In the next Software Process and Measurement Cast number 859, it'll be a surprise. It'll either be a panel discussion on the role of empathy in project management or an interview with Paul Gibbons. Whichever gets recorded first will be presented first. If process improvement is a never-ending journey, why do so many people ask, are we there yet?